Okay, so let's start. So hello everybody. So nice to meet you, even if I cannot really see you. I hope the weather is better in Tel Aviv than in Lausanne. So because it's really rainy here right now. What I will talk to you about right now is about the challenge we have currently every day at Apwide, and it's about our environments. Because as you know, we are a company that provides a solution to manage a testing environment or testing environment in general, as you have seen. And we have also internally some environment challenges. Why? Because we are developing a Jira application, meaning that our testing environment are Jira environments. And we need many different kinds of Jira environments for different purposes. One is for continuous integration, so quite classical use case. We have Selenium test, we have integration test, so we need a container to execute this test. And we have put in place pipelines, we've had less execution of Selenium testing and things like that. So all these kind of things is executed in headless Docker container running Jira instances, for example. But we have also, we have to ensure that our app works with different versions of Jira. We have also to ensure that our app works with different databases. As Jira support many different kind of databases, we have to ensure also that everything is okay in Jira Data Center. So for that, Atlassian as now, we need to test in a Jira Data Center cluster with 1, 2 nodes, 4 nodes, etc. We've also on a very large Jira environment with more than 2 million issues, for example. And we have also a lot of demos for customers, for prospects, for Atlassian user group, for example. So we need to be able to provision very quickly new Jira instances with preset demo dataset. And also, sometimes we have issues, our customers, some issues, bugs, also we have support requests, and we need to be very quick to reproduce bugs. And we have to, a lot of customers do not have the latest version of Jira, so it's not always possible to reproduce in available environment, so we must have the possibility to very quickly build new environment with specific configurations. So what we have done, so we are quite lazy at Apwide, but at the same time quite pragmatic. So let's say, okay, we want to put in place a Jira Environment Self-Service because we need a lot, very often Jira environments. So we just want to empower everyone to do it themselves, himself. And for that, we just decided to reuse what is already existing. So we have already a Jira instance production environment used for our customer to raise tickets, but also internally to manage our development backlogs. And also we use Apwide. So applying our eat your own dog food concept, we will use the solution we develop for customers, but also for ourselves. And we leverage on existing Jenkins. We use intensively for build and deployment and development, and also Docker, that is also already in place for our continuous integration pipeline. So now I will just show you how it works. So here we are going to our production Jira environment. And when we logged into our Jira production environment, the homepage is our environments dashboard. So we have two kinds of dashboards. So it takes quite a long time. Perhaps it's the employee, the Game of Thrones apps that have eaten all the resources of the server. No, kidding. So here we have two types of dashboards. So here a timeline-like dashboards. A bit like Yasin and David just shown you before, but here it's a specific view. You just visualize the history of the last deployed version of your different environments that are here. And also the color, the red is that environment is not available. So you have the history, the logs of the availability and the version deployed on your various environments. And here, the other things that we use a lot it's a list of our environments. And we have two types of lists. The first one is, as we are developing applications for Jira, meaning plugins, here we have typically the version of a Go-Live app that is deployed in our various environments, demo 2, staging, production, and the status of the environment. And here you have all the version of our plugin. We are also tracking the X-Ray version that is deployed. As you've seen before, we have an integration with X-Ray, so it's quite useful also to know which version of X-Ray is deployed on which environment. And also we have a list of environments where file field is deployed. And here the first one is really our Jira Environment Self-Service. So the list of environments that are currently available. So I will switch to our environment inventory page here, access to environment. So here we have the list of all our testing environments. So I will just filter on our Jira environment. So we have just defined an application called Jira in Apwide Golive. And here, so currently we have just two environments because it doesn't really make sense to have running Jira instances on our server that use resources if we don't need it, especially if it's very easy to create on-demand Jira environments. And typically, let's imagine now I have an issue with a customer and I know that he uses Jira 8 version. And here, as you can see, I have only Jira 7.12.3 available and 1.3, so it's real environment. So you have real server that are currently running behind the scene. And okay, so I need a new environment. Here, same as David shown you before, I will create a dev2 environment. So it's only thing I do. So I just set the category, the application, and just created it in Apwide, so nothing more. But here, if I do a refresh of the page, you will see that as for Game of Thrones use case, now it's interesting because I have a new URL, I have new data. So myself that I've just created online environment, I'm just set as owner of the environments. And you can see here it's in deployment. So it means it's in progress. So let's check what is going on the environment. So not a lot of things. Oh, yes, the top one screen that Jira administrators love. I'm sure that every one of you have already seen once this kind of screen. I hope not too often in production environments. But okay, so here you can see, okay, we are just starting a new Jira environment. And it's starting, but the problem is that by default, my dev2, it's odd. No, it's not the right version. I need really the 8.0.1 version deployed. So here, if I go back, it's not available anymore because in fact, what happened behind the scene is that Jenkins just understood very quickly that the right version was not the current version in deployment, so he just triggered a new deployment with the Jira 8 version, and luckily the Jira 8 version is it's much quicker to launch, so should be very soon available, I hope. So here it is, and so you got the point. So it's quite easy that way to provision new Jira environment. And so, as you can see, for example, here we take this one, 7.12 environment. We do not just provide, I would say, a vanilla Jira environment. But we already provide all the set of data that is pre-configured because we don't want to each time to set the demo data, typically if we have a demo. So here, for example, we just have a demo with not Unicode characters, something like that, so things that we sometimes need for some demo. And you can see it's a fully working environment with all the licenses, the plugin already installed and so on. Quite cool. And now I think that the Jira 8 should be available because Atlassian has worked a lot with Jira 8 version, and the startup time is much reduced. And if I check, not to show you that it's not bullshit here about Jira, you have really your 8.0.1 version. And if I go back to the other one here, it's the 7.12.3. So that's why it's really easy to ask for new environment. So now I've shown you what it does, but now I will just explain you a bit how it works. And for people interested to know more, even after the presentation, I will be able to give you more clue about a pipeline of things we use to put this in place. So basically we use our Jira production environment, our Jira master, in which we have Apwide Golive installed with all the list of our Jira environments deployed here. And what happens when we change a status, when we change anything in our environment, we can trigger a webhook. So webhooks basically is just a call of a new URL. And what we want to call is Jenkins. So it points on Jenkins, and it sends all the JSON, all the information, including the attributes you've seen, all is sent to Jenkins. And then Jenkins, with this data and with the events from Apwide Golive, just triggers some job. And typically in our case, the job are just executing Docker command in a Docker host to provide new Docker containers and to run Jira instances. And what is interesting also is that depending, so it's perhaps also part of the answer of a previous question, it can happen a lot of things here in Jenkins or Docker host. Perhaps the server is running out of disk space, or is just down, or Jenkins is failing, no more disk space on Jenkins, or anything, or just if the deployment takes a long time, perhaps you want to just inform your Jira users that the deployment is still in progress, that you pass certain step. So all these kind of things in the other direction, you just update using the Apwide REST API. You can from your Jenkins job or any other kind of tools that is able to speak HTTP to just push information to inform your Apwide users here about what's happening in your environment. So it's what we've seen with the status update in Jira. Do you have some question about that? Or I continue and perhaps we keep the question for the end? Okay.
There's a question, 2 seconds.
Okay.
Carefully. Okay. I wanted to ask whether the Docker host in the right side is hosted under the Jenkins, or whether it is separate host or several hosts machines.
Yeah, currently it's on the same machine. It's we just run Docker command from the Jenkins pipeline. And it's not, yes, we have also another Jenkins agent we use only for benchmark, for performance testing and so on. So it's also possible you just add a new Jenkins agent and you can also use it to run Docker command.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So as Game of Thrones, we have new things that is coming every day, every month, every year in Atlassian ecosystem. And a new challenge that was coming last year was really the Jira Data Center assessment. So we had really to test different things with Jira Data Center. And one thing's we had to test our apps on a very large Jira instance with 2 million of issues, so quite big one, to check that we don't break a big instance of Jira. We had also to test to really mount a Jira data center cluster with 1 to 4 nodes and run benchmark test to measure the performance response time with and without our app. So all these kind of things we had to do was quite new, and again, we are quite lazy but quite pragmatic, and what we do, we always ensure that it's repeatable and it should not be a pain, because it's sure that perhaps in 2 months we will have to do it again. So let's automate everything if it's possible. And the default, I would say, solution proposed by Atlassian to app vendors was to use Amazon Web Services, AWS, and we tried to use it at first. It was working, but it was quite expensive. And yeah, just to run a few set of benchmarks on a very large AWS instance was very quickly quite expensive, at least for us. And so we remembered about a brilliant talk given by Praqma, a Praqma consultant at last Barcelona Atlassian Summit. I don't know if you were here, but if you were here, I'm quite sure that you had appreciate. So Praqma is a Danish company, and so the premises of the talk was to provide an open source solution to deploy a Jira data center cluster in a few minutes. And the guy on the stage could not make a live demo because of Atlassian. It was not possible, but he was ensuring that it was possible. Really, was it bullshit or real things? So we had to check this. So if you are really, really interested by this subject, I really recommend that you have a look at this talk of Henrik during last Atlassian Summit at Barcelona. In fact, what they presented, the solution that they have put in place, is based on Kubernetes. So who knows Kubernetes? Was already heard about Kubernetes? I imagine everyone. I cannot see you, so I don't know, David, if you can
tell many me. People.
Okay.
At least half. Raise again the hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay, great.
Yeah, 1 million.
Okay, 1 million. And who has already used or played with Kubernetes?
We have 1.
Okay. And perhaps a company who are using Kubernetes in production?
1.
Okay, great. So what is Kubernetes? So Kubernetes is a lot of things, and I try just to finger point what I think is most important to know. So in fact, Kubernetes is kind of API over your infrastructure. Meaning an API, what does it mean? It's application programming interface. It means it's a way for an application to communicate with your infrastructure. And your application can be Jenkins, can be any kind of script. And the great idea behind this is that you just write code to define target status of your infrastructure, or to just execute some order or instruction over your infrastructure, typically reboot a server or something like that. And why is it so important? Why I think personally that Kubernetes is really the future is that if you already use Docker, you may have seen that it's not really ready to go on prod alone. You have to put a lot of things around it, and Kubernetes is really a solution to put Docker at scale and to really to be able to do much more with Docker. And the idea behind is, as it's an API, it's kind of interface over your infrastructure is not tied to a proprietary infrastructure like AWS or Azure. It's just a level of abstraction between your application and the engine behind. And it's Kubernetes is a great and very large community. A lot of things are moving very quickly. It's very fast to evolve, and it's also based on the years of Google best practices. So it's really solid, rock solid technology. And so now I will just dig a little bit about in the Apwide Kubernetes cluster we put in place. Sorry, I will just take a little of water. It's raining outside, but it's quite dry in. Sorry for that. Basic things in Kubernetes is that when you will start to work with Kubernetes, you have to create a Kubernetes cluster. So it's the roof, it's the house of Kubernetes. And as said before, Kubernetes is just a specification. It's an API. That standardized way to interact with your infrastructure, but you need an engine, an implementation of Kubernetes. And what we used was the Rancher Kubernetes engine, RKE. I really recommend that if you want to start to play sorry, with Kubernetes, start with it. It's really amazing stuff. It's well documented, and it's really easy to do. And we started to install a master node. So in each Kubernetes cluster, you have at least one master node. And in our case, we just use not a dedicated VPS, so virtual private server, very cheap, around $10 per month, with 2 virtual CPU and 8 gig of RAM. So it's really enough, and 40 gig of disk. And then, so we use a more powerful dedicated server for our worker node. So the idea usually is not to use a master node to put load on it. So usually all your applications are deployed in a dedicated node. So have you understood the node dimension here? Really, usually is tied to a machine behind. So it can be a VM or a bare metal machine or any kind of things. And in this case, our worker node is on a 4 physical CPU with 32 gig of RAMs and 400 fast SSD. And so it's on this worker node that we started to deploy our Jira data center cluster. So first, for Jira, as you know, you need a database. So we have created a pod with Postgres. And what is a pod? Pod is really the smallest element you can deploy on your Kubernetes cluster. And it's a little bit like a Docker container in a Docker host, but in fact, it's not a Docker container, because in your pod here, Postgres here, it's a Docker container. So, and you can have many pods. So for our Jira data center environment, we have two pods, one for the database and one other for the web server. And as we are installing a Jira data center version, we have not just have one Jira server instance, but many one. And you can have many Docker container within the same pod. And another concept that is brought by Kubernetes, very convenient one, is the concept of namespace. So in red here, usually it's a good idea to isolate a group of pods that is in fact an application or an environment. In our case, it's Jira data center, and to group pods that can be spread over multiple machines. Because again, the idea behind Kubernetes is to bring high availability, to bring a robust infrastructure. So it's a good idea to not having all your server, all your node of your Jira server, the data center cluster on the same machine. If the machine goes down, it's a better thing. And here on the, we can just add as many pods as you want, as long as your machine doesn't die, has enough resources, not really to handle that. And the last pod, it will be the start of the demo. Here, it's the Rancher UI. So Rancher, it's great company, great product, and it's not only a Kubernetes engine that they provide this magnificent web UI here, and it's a good way to show you how it works in real life. So here we are connected to our Rancher admin console. And what is interesting with Rancher UI here is that you can manage multiple clusters. So in our case, we just have one Kubernetes cluster, but in bigger companies who are using Kubernetes, you will quickly have multiple cluster. And typically, if you have a production, it's really a good idea to have it on a dedicated cluster. Quite obvious. And if you click on it, so here, when you open your Kubernetes cluster, here you find the two nodes that I was talking about. So we have a master node and a worker node. So what is interesting for us is the worker node, because it's the node on which we have deployed our Jira data center cluster. And here, very nice view, out of the box, we just install Rancher. You have already a real-time health check of your machine with the CPU, the memories, the number of pads that are used. You have also directly, if you have disk space pressure or disk pressure, everything is here. You have even a pre-configured the last hours, the history of the CPU utilization, average memory utilization. So you have a lot of things. You have even for you that you know Grafana, you heard about Grafana. So it's a great tool, but sometimes quite cumbersome to configure. So when you install Rancher, you have already pre-configured dashboard with all the information you need. So of your different machines here. So it's really great with Prometheus, data coming from Prometheus. Okay, but now what we are more, and here you can see the number of CPU, and so all things comes, I would say, free out of the box. And so what I'm interested in now, it's just my Apwide cluster. So here I have my namespace, Jira Data Center, and it's in this namespace that I have all my workloads. So here you find the two pods that I was just showing in my schema. So one is for the Postgres database, and one is for the web server cluster. And what is interesting here, if you open, you can visualize here. So perhaps I will click on it, it will be clearer, especially if your screen is not so big. Here you can see you have two running containers in current clusters. And what is quite obvious, quite convenient, is that you have directly also access to the logs. If you feel that you have a problem on the nodes on your cluster, for example, you can just check on it, click on it to see the logs, or even execute the shell. So you have directly, so here you are directly to the Jira home folder. So you can do things right from the user interface. Quite convenient also. And the real powerful feature, Kubernetes, as you know, is possible to scale automatically. So you can define rule to automatically add new nodes to your cluster if the server is under load, and release nodes that are not used if the load is lower. And typically you can also do it with just that. Let's say now, okay, I have two nodes, two servers, you can see here, I just need one, so I remove, and you see, okay, removing, so something happened. If I'm quick enough to check the logs, you will see the logs you see when Jira is shutting down. So it's clean shutting down with a clean stop of Tomcat, and is okay, it's removing the instance, and now I have a nodes with just one instance. If I want to put again two nodes, okay, and I even can put a third one if I want. So it's just Kubernetes that is managing the cluster. So now he's starting the first one, and perhaps if we go back in a few minutes, you will see that the third one will be added after the second one is added. So he really takes care of that. And all this can be done very easily from the Rancher user interface. And also quite convenient, you have also pre-configured Grafana specifically for for your Jira data center cluster. And here, typically, if you see the desired CPU, you can see that just a few minutes before, we just were using one CPU, because by default, we assign one CPU per Jira instance. And here, the desired status is free, because I just upscale the cluster to free. So Kubernetes knows that already 3 CPUs is booked for my cluster, and here in green is really what is available. So as only 2 nodes are running, there are still 2 CPUs available. So it's very nice tool. So check the logs here. I think Jira. Okay. So it's still starting. And also what is quite convenient when you work with a cluster is that it's quite convenient to have different URL, one to access the load balancer, so it's this one. So this is Jira, really a Jira data center that is running here with cluster activated. But typically, if you want to access specific nodes, you have also here directly can access to, so this one, for example, this is node 0 of my cluster, etc. So it's really nice. So to go back to my presentation, so I will show you more if you're interested after. So in my presentation, so just to sum it up, what did we use to mount this? At the end, it's just a dedicated server with 4 CPU and 1 virtual private service. So it cost us around $90 per month at OVH. I don't know if it's existing or if you know it's in Israel, but it's a French provider now. Is growing and in many parts of the world, but it's really good quality, good server. You are dedicated machines for very cheap price and very good machines. And then we put Kubernetes and Rancher, and all this stuff is free. And honestly, documentation is really great for Rancher. And if you want to build on-premise cluster, is really the way to go. And we are very happy with this infrastructure right now. And naturally, we don't perform tests or Jira data center on big Jira instance every day. So most of the time, the server is just down. But if we just need it, we just click on a button and it just mounts nodes. And the rest of the time, we use all the power of the machine for Jenkins, for our Jenkins pipelines to build, to run automated testing or things like that in our continuous integration environment. Naturally, we don't use Kubernetes yet for production. It's really for our tools and environment things. And the really good news is that I already talked to you about Praqma. So Praqma is really already providing now a Jira Data Center Server Helm chart. What is Helm? Perhaps you already heard about it. Helm, it's for people who knows about web development, who knows about NPM or thing like that. It's really a library of pre-configured templates for Kubernetes. And it's really growing very quickly also. It's really a full library of pre-configured application that you can use. And as Kubernetes is just an API, so at the end, when you deploy an application, you just prepare some YAML files, and Helm really help you to develop and to upgrade and to deploy Helm files. Because typically, if you want to deploy Jenkins as us on your Kubernetes cluster, it's quite sure that a lot of people in the world have already done that, and that perhaps 80 or 90% of the people use the same setup as you. And so usually these templates are published on GitHub, so it's easy to fork, to adapt them to your own needs. And the really good news is that Praqma right now, tomorrow, will be present at Kubernetes conference in Barcelona. and I have very good contact with Henrik, who is really the guy who put this in place at Praqma, and they will announce. So Helm chart is already open source, but they will also open their Docker container, because currently there's no officially supported Jira Docker container. So you can find many different images right now, but I would say none of these images are really ready, I would say, for big production instance of Jira. And Praqma really worked on that, and they will provide a Helm chart and really production grade Docker container very soon. It will be announced. I spoil a little bit then, but I think if you are here tomorrow, today is that you perhaps not be at Barcelona tomorrow, but it will be announced tomorrow. And I think if you want to go with the deployment to Kubernetes with your Jira data center or even Jira server, it works also for Jira server, you should definitely have a look on what Praqma will ship. And contact them if you need support. It's really great stuff. So to finish my presentation, just to sum it up, the takeaways. So the first thing is, it's a good idea if you have a lot of application, if you have a lot of environments and you have a lot of requests to provision new environments every day, why not create a self-service, environment self-service in Jira? So you've seen how it's possible to do that with Apwide, with Jira, with Jenkins, Docker, or Bamboo also, or other kind of technologies. And Docker is much better with Kubernetes. I would say if you start with Docker, don't wait too long before having a look to Kubernetes, because it really makes sense to use both of them. And as you will start using Kubernetes, you will start also using Helm. It's really it really leverage and simplify also deployment of all standardized, I would say, common applications that are available here. And also really have a look on Rancher stuff if you want to build on-premises Kubernetes cluster. Still, if you have the money, you can still use Google Cloud Engine or AWS Kubernetes offer. So it really works well, and for production it was the way to go. But if you just need Kubernetes cluster to run tools or for your development, thing like that, it's really not complicated anymore. It was very complicated a few years ago, but now it's really become simple with Rancher. And you don't have to pay much more for your build tools and so on. You can really, also if you have legal constraints and you just cannot, for legal reason, run your infrastructure elsewhere than on-premise on your local data center, you should really have a look on this stuff. And just to conclude, if we have already given a small talk about how to Dockerize Jira. So we have some things about which images to choose. So there will be something new with Praqma coming soon, but at least you can have a look to apwide.com/docker. You will find also example of command of where you can launch Docker container, Jira in Docker in Docker container. So, okay, so I'm done with my presentation. I hope it was interesting.
Questions?
Now I'm ready for questions.
I'm sure you have lots of questions. Okay.
One question only. Okay, one question only.
Yeah.
What if I want to save all these environment in the context of a Git branch?
You mean in Rancher UI, for example, here?
For instance, if I want to, let's say, to open an environment in the context of a Git branch like Bitbucket, GitHub, GitLab, etc.
You mean to store the configuration of your environment from Git?
I mean, let's say that I want to set up a new environment,
yeah,
and I want to isolate it to to a separate environment, you know, just to do some changes, and then maybe I want to run a pull request or a merge request.
So not sure really to understand, but okay. Let me, if I don't answer to your question. All these things, all what you see here, all our Jira data center environment are defined by YAML files, and typically we have a Git repository with all these YAML files, and it's really easy. So it's versioned, and typically if we have to build from scratch a new cluster, we would just apply the configuration, and it's very easy to create new environments based on existing template, and these templates are just codes, are just YAML file in a Git.
Okay, thank you.
So it's really the idea behind this kind of technology is really infrastructure as a code. And what is really powerful with Kubernetes is that you can do both things. You can do, you have two approaches when you're dealing with infrastructure. You can either send commands, say, okay, I reboot my machine, I want to upscale my cluster, thing like that. So it's what we call imperative approach. And you just script and sequence what you want. And the other things is the declarative way of working, meaning that you just describe the final state you want. So let's say, okay, Jira data center, I want 4 nodes. I want to connect on this database with this version of Jira, because it's very also easy to upgrade. You just change the version of the image, Docker image you use, and all these kind of things. You just describe it in a YAML file, and you just deploy it in the cluster. And you can do it with command line if you prefer using command line, because basically Kubernetes. So here for the demo, I've just shown you Rancher UI because it's more visual, but naturally all what can be done here with the web UI can be done with command line.
Another question? So you are all ready to launch your Kubernetes cluster with Rancher? Okay, next time I come, I want to see your Kubernetes clusters working with Apwide. Okay, cool. Thanks a lot. I hope it was not too technical for you, the second part. Yeah, Tanya, you are laughing. Too technical, yeah, for some of you. Okay, anyway, we are going to publish the recording of the session with the slides as well. There were a lot of resources that were shown by Guillaume, by Yassine previously in the other slides. So all of that I will push online. Don't hesitate to have a look. Don't hesitate to come back to me if you have any question, to me or to Guillaume if it's too technical. Yeah, we are always happy to make another demo if you think that either Apwide or other things you saw here could be relevant for your organization. Just let me know. So my email is david@apwide.com. And right now, anyway, will be available still for some drinks. It's already late, but I mean, my flight is only tomorrow in the afternoon, so you can get drunk. Thanks a lot for the invitation again, Gal, Tanya. Thanks, and it was really a pleasure to have all of you here tonight.